Your Creative Push, episode 46.
You have those moments in your life, the light switch clicks on, and you're like, wow, why did it take me so long to figure this out?
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Adonna Khare. Adonna is an artist mainly focused on large-scale pencil drawings. Her work has been collected by prestigious public and private collections throughout the world, and in 2012, she won the world's largest art competition, ArtPrize, competing against over 1,500 artists from around the world. She has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, NPR, the Huffington Post, Daily Mail, Juxtapoz Magazine, and Mashable, just to name a few. Now, Adonna, what is really amazing about your work is how large it is. Can you take us back to when you first started drawing and how you got up to the point of drawing such large-scale pieces?
Yeah, and as an undergraduate, you do all your projects, and they're all standard sizes, and I never did anything that amazing, and the last semester of my undergrad, I had a teacher go, what is it that you like to draw? And I said, I'd really love to draw animals. That's my thing. And he said, why don't you just do that? And I said, okay. And then all of a sudden I realized my first 5 years of college was useless because all I really wanted to do was draw animals. But to make a long story kind of short, I went into grad school 6 months later. I got in. And I had to do a series of small animal drawings to get into grad school. And they liked them. And they said, those are great. And my first professor in grad school looks at me and he goes, okay, so now you're doing these cute little animal drawings. They're nice. What is your plan? And I realized I was just doing what I thought that art students do, which is use a reasonable size paper in the art store and draw something on it. I didn't really think about it as anything other than this is just what you did. And it was amazing. He was like, no, now try 18 by 24. And so I did a series of 4 drawings, very detailed, 18 by 24s. And then it's like, you have those moments in your life, the light switch clicks on and you're like, wow, why did it take me so long to figure this out? And I realized that there was something in the scale of it that was the magic I was trying to capture. I liked my little drawings and I felt they had good little stories and everything, but all of a sudden, as I started moving bigger in size, I felt like what I was really trying to say started to happen. And so after that, I got my first roll of paper, rolled that out on the wall in my studio and started drawing. And then I realized that's not enough. I want to create an environment, and that's where the really large work starts to come in. And so I would drive around any art supply store that had oversized rolls and 5, 6, 7 feet rolls in width is what I was trying to find, so that when the viewer can walk up to it, they can be engulfed by the drawing. And so I would hang these papers everywhere. I'd hang them in my hallway at the house. I had 2 in my bedroom. This is before I had my daughter, because that would absolutely not have worked with a kid. But and then I would hang them at grad school. So wherever I was able to work on these large-scale drawings. And some of them were meant to be pieced together and some weren't. But what I was trying to do is get to this point where I could create an entire environment that would bring people in and invite them to stay for a long time.
So it's kind of like baby steps kind of leading up to like the massive scale that you're at now.
Yeah, it's just so funny for me. A lot of my progress comes from permission. And I don't know if that's just how I am, but it was permission from a really important teacher to draw what I wanted, and then permission to go bigger, and then giving myself permission to do even these larger ones that don't make sense really financially or show-wise to create these environments. So it was a slower process, but then once I did my first mural, which was 34 feet, 5 feet by 34 feet, it was,
oh my God,
the last piece of my graduate, it was like the end piece of my graduate show. And 2 of the pieces were done at home, and 1 of the pieces was done at school. And that's not true. I actually rotated them in 3 different places because 1 was 14 feet and 2 were 10 feet. And so each one of these pieces was created in different environments, but they're all one piece. And it was just this really cool way of creating one piece in different locations and then piecing it together to become this huge environmental piece that when you sat down in front of it, it spanned your whole field of vision. It's pretty exciting end to my grad school.
Yeah, for sure. And so, as you said, it was based on like permission. What would you suggest to somebody who has like kind of an absurdly big idea that they, subconsciously just brush off because they couldn't imagine just, doing it? What would you suggest to them to kind of not need the permission to do it?
Yeah, I think we're all different with what motivates us and with what doesn't motivate us. I needed permission to draw, even though I always knew what I wanted to draw. I needed permission from somebody that I trusted and looked up to say that's okay. But then after a certain point, when I started drawing really big, that permission wasn't from somebody else that I was looking for. It was just from myself. And I realized this whole time I was just looking for somebody to validate what I was already feeling. And as my work got larger, a lot of people around me that I worked with were like, oh, goodness, they're great. But what are we actually going to do with this? Like, maybe this is too big. This is not reasonable.
Right.
And, I just kind of continued on doing what I felt needed to be done and then being flexible with that. For everybody, it's different. Some of my artist friends, they know what they want to do, but finding the time, like time management is such a big issue. And having to sacrifice something else to do that is the big thing. Something else has got to give to be able to do these things. And finding out what that is and is it worth it to do that? We're not all motivated by the same things. But if something is so strong in you that you feel incomplete without it, I would say give yourself the permission. That's really all you need anyway in the end.
How long do you think about such, because they're so big in scale, like how long does it kind of stew in your brain before you kind of start working on it?
Yeah, the large drawings, I'm talking, that are at least 5, 6, 7, 8 feet. Those concepts usually sit with me for several months before I can get them out, because I work on large scale works as well as a series of small scale works all at the same time. So these kind of quick ideas and they're not studies, they're finished drawings, but they're kind of these little ideas that I work out. I work them out in these small finished drawings, really detailed renderings. And sometimes those turn into big ideas. And sometimes I do those just to buy time until I can get to the large paper and make space to do these big concept drawings. But I've had drawings literally sitting in my brain. We're 10 years now. They're still kind of in parts of my brain going, it's not time yet. I haven't worked that out yet, but it's coming, and when it's going to be good, but for some reason, it hasn't hit the point where it needs to get to the paper yet. It's still cooking.
It's still cooking.
And I have quite a few things like in the back just cooking.
Right.
And then certain things come to the front when the paper is in front of me and it's just ready to be drawn on. Like they all it's like a fashion show. They all just kind of like trickle in front of me, and I go, okay, is it time for, who's it time for? Mm-hmm. And then I start, because once I start doing one of these large works, we're talking months and years of a time investment into it.
Right, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge investment. So for you, basically, you let it kind of stew, and then it kind of just naturally kind of starts whenever it's ready to start?
Yeah. They kind of push forward as I'm working on small ones or working on finishing up other large ones. They kind of like jockey for position, these other ideas. And some are like, I have to do this next. And then the next week I'll be working on the same drawing in the studio thinking, what will I do next? And this other one comes popping forward like, you need to do this. Like, you need to do me. Like, this is the next one. And I think a lot comes down to what is important to me when that new paper goes up in the studio. What is, in the forefront then? And that's the one that usually gets chosen, and I start to work that idea out.
Yeah, I love that idea of like jockeying for position, like on a cue almost, like a cue in your brain, like which one is next. There's a fine line, though. I think a lot of people can struggle with that as far as, multitasking. Like they can't, pick one project and go with just that one. And that kind of hinders them on all the different things that they have on their mind. So what kind of advice would you have for somebody like that doesn't have maybe as good of instinct as you do in terms of which one to go for next?
I think that's why it's important that I do a series of large and small ones at the same time. Because a lot of times what will happen is I'll start this idea and be very motivated about it, and then it starts to kind of lose its steam, and I forget why it is that one needed to be, 8 feet tall. And I'll go and explore maybe 5 to 10 small drawings, working out these other ideas that I had and seeing what it is about them that is pushing me away from the big one. So when I feel repelled by the larger works, I go, okay, something's not flowing today, like this is not working out, but I don't like to waste time, and I know we all have busy days and families and all of that. I don't have time to sit in the studio and stare at the wall for, 10 hours. So I will try to be productive and move the energy into something else. So separate myself from it and move on. And in some cases, I have actually taken down large works that I've spent weeks on, put up a new paper, and started something else that I really felt was a better use of my time. That the other one really at this point was a dead end. And but we all, I've done it too, where in the studio I've wasted, many hours with my brain flipping around in circles going, but what about this? And then walked out of there, frazzled with a headache and have drawn like 3 inches worth of drawing,
And then how do you regroup from a day like that?
Luckily I have a 6-year-old, and she doesn't let you get all down in the dumps and be like, oh,
yeah,
because, we got stuff to do, and we got homework. And so for me, I thought, after I had my daughter, it'd be so hard, because the way I used to draw before I had her was, the weather was everything had to do all these things in an order. I was very, okay, I'd have my morning coffee, I'd do this, and then I'd go in the studio, it'd play this music, I'd have my 5 hours in the studio, I'd come in this house, very regimented, and that's how I thought my creative process worked. But then, I started teaching, and I had a family, and then I realized I don't get the luxury of that anymore if I want to be an artist. So if I don't figure this out and learn to turn things on and off a little bit better, then I can't do it. So I just started to turn things off when I walk out of my studio. I just fall into a different role, and I occupy with these other things that need to happen. And then when I have a moment to sit down and think about it again, I just kind of take off, where I left off.
Yeah, that's a very cool thing to be able to do, is to kind of, have your separate self, so that you don't, bring your work into your art necessarily, or bring your your life and your problems that you might be having in your life into your art, and vice versa. Now, most of your art has to do with animals. Can you kind of talk about animals and the role that they play in your art and in your life?
Yeah, animals. It's something I started drawing as a kid, and it's hard to know originally why I started that. But, I grew up in kind of a rural part of Iowa, and I always spent as much time as possible kind of in nature and disappearing. I'd call it disappearing, but exploring and going out in what I now know are actual drainage ditches for the runoff from the cornfields, which now is, I think about it now and I'm like, oh, gross. Parents, where the hell were you? We were playing in the drain ditches from the runoff from the field. Anyways, we don't need to get into that. But I would disappear into the forest and into these ditches, and I just loved being in nature around animals, and I think I was socially not always comfortable around other people. And I remember, going to birthday parties, but seeking out the family dog or cat and then feeling comfortable. And we always had a lot of animals growing up, and I always felt very comfortable around them. I was never lonely or anything. And so when I started to draw as a kid, they naturally became my subjects of my artwork, because that's what I loved. That's who I connected with. And I used them in my artwork to tell all of my stories. Everything was always done using animals. Even my art history pages, I'd find a way to bring all the animal, I don't know what symbols into it, so I would be able to draw like at least an eagle or a lion or something that interested me. And as an artist, it just developed as a language. And I would say the last maybe 10, 12 years of my career, as my artwork has progressed, the animals serve as symbols to tell the story. So they're not animals anymore that I just enjoy drawing. They carry with them kind of a lineage of being drawn so many times that they now have their own meaning. And certain animals and doing certain things now represent certain events, loss, love, connection, family, certain people, certain events. Now they carry in them in more value. I can read them like a diary. I would be able to read a large mural of mine and be able to know what was going on, who I was talking about, what was happening in the world, how I felt about something by looking at my drawings.
That's really interesting because I have written down here a question that I wanted to ask. Well, a two-part question, really, but the question I wrote was, do you find that all of your art can be pinpointed to one particular point in your life? And that's pretty much what you just said.
Yeah.
But one in particular that I wanted to ask you about was the screaming bear. I was wondering if you could tell us kind of that story.
Yeah, the screaming bear is a drawing that will always be is my personal drawing. Yeah, the screaming bear was started before my dad passed and was finished after he passed away. The story of my dad passing away was very unexpected. We were actually working at my studio repairing the door, and he had mentioned, he wasn't feeling well. He had a really bad headache. And so, I told him, go home. I had his toolbox in my house and all that. Didn't think much of it. He went to the doctor, and they discovered he had a brain tumor. And so things kind of spiraled out of control after that. And I had started this drawing. Originally, it was the screaming bear part of it.
Mm-hmm.
When they told me he had the brain tumor, that's a pretty scary thing to hear, and where it was located and all of that. But we were looking for treatment options and all of that, and he was in the hospital being treated, and they decided they needed to remove the tumor pretty quickly because it was causing significant amount of complications at that point. And he didn't survive the surgery. And so we're talking under 2-week time frame here that this happened. So the days where I wasn't at the hospital, I would come to the studio and just kind of sketch out this bear. And originally it was just this idea of hearing the words brain tumor, so it was a screaming bear, kind of like that feeling that you get when you hear something and you just don't want to hear it, and then once you hear it, you just want to not hear it.
Yeah, scream and then go hibernate or something.
Yeah, and then the morning that I was called that he was officially brain dead, I was working on the drawing. And I remember the spot on the drawing when I was on the phone that I was. So it's a very it's a almost minute by minute play of what happened when my dad passed away. And so after my dad passed, I worked on it for several months to complete it, and it obviously changed from the original idea of it to what it is now. And I don't know if you have visuals attached or anything, but it's basically a giant grizzly bear. This is almost 9 feet tall drawing, and its head is cut open and stitched where my dad's head was. They had to remove the whole, basically from where the ear starts all the way, like an arc, all over where the forehead is, all the way to the other ear. So I don't know. It's pretty, to imagine that whole front area to be removed off. So in my grizzly, it's kind of pulled back tight, it's being placed back where it should have been. And the butterflies and bees, out of the mouth just kind of represent the sweet things, but like how hard it stings. I'm sorry.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for opening up and talking about it. I know that it's hard, and we appreciate that. I think that, oh, and by the way, that image will be linked on our show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Adonna, Adonna. I agree that, I remember the exact point in my life where I was at when writing a particular piece, my exact life situation and what was going on and what I was feeling, etc. But what does that do for you, and what does it do for somebody to be able to have that kind of, sidekick along with you, and having your art be like a personal journal or diary that you can look back upon to kind of see this timeline of not just your art, but, of your life? What does that do for you personally?
Well, for me, it's really kind of an interesting feeling, because when I throw these drawings out there, not like I throw them out there, but when I put these drawings out there, I just throw them around. When I hang these drawings up for people to see, it's such almost a release that I'm like, there's so much personal information and fear and love in these drawings that I go, how lucky am I that I get to show people all of these really personal things, but I don't have to give them everything.
Right.
But creating it was my therapy, was my friend, and is my diary. It's all these things. It's every single one of my drawings from when I first started doing this to now have been basically one continuous drawing. They all just piggyback off the other. They're all just a story of life, just documented with these symbols that I can read. And a lot of my family knows now what a lot of these things are. And so you see like my daughter go, oh, you know what that is, or even my mom and my sister and people that have been around me for a long time, they don't even question it anymore. They just go, oh, okay, I think I know what that's about. Or
interesting.
And what's really exciting about other people seeing them is allowing them to give them meaning, their own meaning. And to maybe with the screaming bear, you can feel the sadness and kind of the danger and this kind of the way that the bear's standing and they're on this cliff and everything's going off the cliff, and feel that kind of angst. But maybe they're able to put their own personal experience in that and get something from that and get what they need from that, or be able to relate to that somehow in their lives.
Yeah, and for me in particular, when I saw the screaming bear portion, it did elicit like an emotion in me. Like I could feel like a pain almost coming from the bear, and for me, the dialogue I think I told myself was more of like one with like a sadness with its environment, with nature almost, but then. After hearing your story before this interview, I heard that you tell the story somewhere else, and then it had so much more meaning to me. So I think that it's awesome to be able to, not only for yourself to be able to have that there. It's like almost like a gift to yourself, but it's like a gift to other people too. And it's like the extra like cherry on top of that gift is like being able to then share like your story about it and what it means to you. And I think people can resonate with that as well. I just think it's so great.
Well, thanks. And I get mixed. Sometimes I feel like I don't want to tell everybody everything about it, because it's like the spoiler, I'd like people to experience something, that comes from themselves from it, and really be able to pull it in. And that's just as important as my meaning, because I got what I needed. I created it. I was able to say what I needed to say. And then I really do like it when people can gain something from that and put their own stories to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of like the role of art and like the gift of art. So that's great. Well, Adonna, it is time for our final push. And this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of somebody you've already inspired and really helped out today, and give them that final push into pursuing their creative passions.
I think I think my best advice for somebody who feels very passionate about art is that the value in doing what you love and giving something else up and putting that value in making of the art is and that act of sacrifice makes the art worth so much. So when you do something that you love and you have to give something else up for it, it makes it valuable. And if you're willing to do that for your art, then it is worth your extra time and effort. And in the art world, there's never a shortage of people that will tell you it's not good. It's just that. It's silly. In my case, those are just animals. It's just representational art. It doesn't mean anything. And I always knew that it did. If you believe strongly that it does and you're willing to give something else up to do it, it is worth it. It's worth your time and it's worth your energy. And so start small and do what you can on your own. And then don't be afraid to try to get it out there. And social media now is a really great way to start that. It wasn't when I first started, 10, 15 years ago, but now it is. There's a voice for artists that wasn't there before. And I think that should be utilized. I never thought I'd push for that, but try it. It's a way to be seen, and you might be able to be seen by the right people. And good luck.
That's perfect advice. Yeah. I like the idea of like using what you're kind of giving up as like almost like a currency to have an appreciation for it later.
Yeah. I think if you're not giving something up, and this is just I don't know, I'm kind of dramatic that way, but the time that I give up with family to work in the studio, or the time that I give up doing something else I know I would like doing, I don't want to waste that time. Time is so valuable. It just makes it worth so much more,
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, it's great advice. Adonna, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
Well, thank you. This was really great.
Of course. And you can find Adonna on her website, which is adonnakhe.com. And on Facebook, she's Adonna Khare Artist. It's ADONNA KHARE. And on Instagram, Twitter, and pretty much everything else, right? You're Adonna Khare?
I think Instagram's Adonna Khare, Facebook's Adonna Khare Artist. It should just pop up if you type in Adonna Khare, but Artist on Facebook.
All right, Adonna, thank you again so much for coming on the show today.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, that was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Adonna, for coming on the show. Guys, remember this idea of giving yourself permission to do the thing that you want to do. As she mentioned, it was something that she struggled with for a long time, this idea of needing permission to go bigger and go bigger. And ultimately, it was just up to her giving herself permission. And I can totally relate to this with a lot of the creative things that I've done. It's been a matter of, who am I to do this, this new idea, this new thing? And if you're feeling that as well, Adonna and I are granting you permission to do whatever it is that's on your mind, however crazy it may seem, especially if somebody else hasn't done it. It's kind of your responsibility to do that thing, so do it. Just a minute for some iTunes ratings and reviews shout-outs. Sanvango G43 said, although I'm new to the podcast, I find it a great way to keep ourselves on track. It has been a delightful experience to be understood the right way. Bullseye. It will be great to share my experience somehow. Please do share your experience. Shoot me an email, youngmin@yourcreativepush.com. That goes for everyone. I love to hear your stories and I love to see your art. And if you want to be a guest on the show even, hit me up and we'll see what we can make work. Stephen Gomez said, Youngman Brown talks with creative experts every day to jumpstart your creativity. A great dose of daily motivation. Highly recommended. Swaney Dog Oz said, inspirational. Always leaves me motivated to do more. And Stephen Shalowitz said, this is the show that gives you the final push to get going, to follow your creative passion and your life's dream. Nike was right. Just do it. Well done, Youngman, and looking forward to hearing more. Thank you so much for those ratings and reviews. I really appreciate them. And keep them coming, people. If you haven't yet left us a rating and review, I would totally appreciate if you did. Just hit up iTunes or whatever podcast player you happen to listen to it on and tell us what you think. On tomorrow's show, we have Michael Shane Bloom.
The best way I can describe it is it's just really, really fun and really, really satisfying to create something. Doesn't matter what it is. You could make you could use Play-Doh and make a sculpture. And first, you finish that sculpture, and there's just something so awesome about having done that. You can say, I did this. Like, I put a part of me in this. Like, I spent time, I envisioned what this was going to be, and now it's here. And there's something so cool about that. Like, I over, 11, 12 years, I still haven't gotten over how cool that is. How cool it is to be able to create something and say, I did this.
Michael is an awesome photographer and filmmaker who does these amazing photos and time-lapse videos of nature and of space. I really, really enjoyed my conversation with him, and you definitely don't want to miss it. And you also definitely need to check out his work. I'd suggest checking out Mirror City and Existence, 2 of his time-lapse videos that are really, really cool and inspirational. But anyway, that is for you tomorrow. So hopefully today you were inspired enough to get your work done. Have an awesome and productive day, and we will see you tomorrow if you need another push. Have a great day. Bye.